Welcome back to the channel. Usually, it's been night trains as of late, but we actually had some day trains in this video, so I thought we'd get the night trains out of the way first. The first train was NS16R with a crispy AC44 C6M trailing. And behind the 16R a couple hours later was this 31T. And here's the first of the daylight trains that I mentioned. This is NS11R in Afton, New York. What's interesting about 11R today is that he's got 4 EMDs for power, 2 SD60s and 2 SD70 ACs. At one point, EMD dominated the locomotive market, and is still a competitor today. Especially with locomotives like the SD40-2, which is considered one of the most reliable locomotives in history. They're so reliable that they're still in service today, all across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. 11R just doesn't have locomotives that are pretty cool. Rolling stock as well, including a U.S. Army gondola and a Southern boxcar. And once we get into the auto racks, we have a brand new CPKC auto rack. CPKC stands for Canadian Pacific Kansas City, which, you guessed it, is the merger between Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern. In April 2023, Canadian Pacific finally acquired the Kansas City Southern, making it the first trans-con railroad to stretch across Canada, United States, and Mexico. CPKC is still using the beaver logo, which was on the Canadian Pacific. The only difference is adding the KC on the end to CP. No railroad infrastructure or locomotives has been painted yet. When locomotives are going to be painted, they'll be painted black, yellow, and red. Next up, a familiar face came up the D&H. The NS-1069, the Virginian Heritage Unit. However, unlike the last time it was here, it is supporting new paint and new number boards. The last time the 1069 was on the D&H, it was filthy, covered in dirt. Here is a photo of it in 2020, the last time it was up here. The Virginian Railroad was founded in 1907 and lasted until 1959, when the N&W would take up the remains of the Virginian Railroad. The only parts that weren't taken up were the electrified portions, which those parts were abandoned. The N&W took over in 1959, as previously stated, and the N&W themselves would last until 1982, when they would merge with the Southern Railway to create Norfolk Southern. Hence how the Virginian is one of Norfolk Southern's predecessors. The train that NS 1069, the Virginian, is on today is NS Train 264, bound for Ayer, Massachusetts. The double stacks at the end are bound for Mechanicsville, where they'll be set off as they are too tall to make it through the tunnels on the Pan Am. This next car here, take a good note on this one. This is FVC 2232. Interestingly, with 2 trailers, and they're just black cars. But take a note of those cars. Just lodge that in your mind. .264 also, interestingly, had 40-foot wells. Not sure why these are here, because this train only carries 53-foot containers, not 40 feet. Wow, didn't see that coming.
Last time I saw it, 1069, it was way dirtier. That was back in 20.
The next morning, I was back at it when I caught 264's southbound counterpart train, the 265. 265 is bound for Chicago, Illinois, and look, FVC 2232 coming south. This train also had a Hub Group 50th anniversary container in the mix as well. Seeing actual flat cars and piggyback cars on an intermodal train today is getting quite rare. What's also rare is the Hub Group 50th anniversary container, as there's so little of them out there in service. Whenever you see one of these containers, make sure you take a picture of it and post it on Instagram or Facebook and use the hashtag HubGroup50. Hub Group will donate $100 to one of its charities if you do this. 265 is the southbound counterpart of the 264 as previously stated. The double stacks are up at the front. They'll be dropped off in either Binghamton or Buffalo, most of them being dropped off in Binghamton, and some of them, when they're dropped off in Binghamton, will head down to Taylor, PA. The single stacks, however, go all the way to Chicago. And they make the complete journey from AR to Chicago. The next day was a lot nicer and no rain was in the forecast, and 30T was making its way south through the fall foliage. Today he's got 3 GEs up front with 2 -9s and an AC44 C6M. Just like the 11R we saw earlier in the video, the 30T also had really nice rolling stock and loads, including those telephone poles and that Southern Railway boxcar. If you haven't told by now, I'm a sucker for the Southern boxcars. I have one of them in my HO scale collection. Who am I kidding? I'm a sucker for Southern Railway stuff in general. Speaking of old cars, while I was filming this train, my mother was in Roscoe, New York, and took these pictures of old Ontario and Western stuff. The Ontario and Western would be in existence from 1884 to 1957, when the last train in 1957 ran from Norwich, New York to Middletown, New York. Unfortunately, the Ontario and Western has the reputation of being the first railroad in the United States, or a major railroad, to fully abandon its main line. Luckily, where I'm at, the trains are still running. This is 11R once again, and hey, the 1069 came back south. She definitely stands out amongst the other 5 units she was paired with that night. Amongst these are 2 SD60s, 2 ES44 DCs, and 1 AC44 C6M in the mix. 11R is out of Ayer, Massachusetts, and with the final destination of Binghamton, New York. NS 1069 was built May 2012 and released to NS on June 27, 2012. But when it emerged from the shops, it was wearing the Virginian Railroad scheme, as that same year, Norfolk Southern was celebrating its 40th anniversary and wanted to pay homage to its predecessor roads, which the Virginian was one of 20. This 11R would meet NS 31T in Afton. 31T had another surprise, a WFRX SD70 Max second of 3. This is WFRX 8965, Former BNSF 8965, built in 1998. Norfolk Southern is in the middle of a power crisis right now, where they don't have enough power, so they've leased 22 SD70MAX from WFRX. WFRX stands for Wells Fargo. Yup, the banking company. And NS has also bought AC4400s from CEFX. And with the 31T going around the bend, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you on the bend. God bless.